John, we had somebody leave the Mets, and it wasn't a good day for that organization. Edwin Diaz is now a Dodger.
Yeah, I mean, very bad day, really bad. I mean, I don't see why and how this happened. This isn't a tremendous amount of money in the grand scheme of things. They signed Juan Soto for 10 times this amount of money last winter. I'm not sure what's going on with him, but we're going to dive into it today. And I think we have no choice but to really pull out the hammer on the Mets. They deserve it.
Yeah, we're gonna break down the Diaz signing. We'll talk about Kyle Schwarber going back to the Phillies. Jeff Kent recently got in the Hall of Fame. Stark, our friend, was on that committee. We have the larger ballot as well. We'll talk about all of that. We'll play hit and error at the end. If you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John, we were blowing up a little bit yesterday. In very quick succession, news broke that Kyle Schwarber was going back to the Phillies, 5 years, $150 million. And then right after that, news broke that Edwin Diaz was leaving the Mets to go to the Dodgers. 3 years, 69 million, some deferrals in there that bring down the actual current value of it. But John, it was seismic, both of them. But I think we all thought the Mets would do what they had to do in the end to keep Edwin Diaz for relative pennies, especially for a team owned by Steve Cohen. They let one of the few bright spots from a 2025 season, an elite closer, and a fan favorite at a time where there's not many fans who are happy with the team, go to the organization that Steve Cohen said he wanted to model his after. He was not the mammoth owner here. This guy got away.
Yeah, it's a real shame for the Mets and the Mets fans. This is a great guy, great personality, and one of the best closers in baseball. It is a real loss. I'm not sure how they make up for it. I know they're talking about Robert Suarez and to Robert Suarez. He's a very good closer. He is an Edwin Diaz. He also doesn't have that song that I saw our back page, which was great today. The music died. Great back page. Terrible day for the Mets. You know, I it doesn't look good that they came in a few million short. It doesn't make sense for the Mets. I'm wondering, even if they'd come up to 3 million or five, even added 5 million, does he still go to the Dodgers? I mean, there is a big alert of being on the Dodgers at this point, and is it because the Dodgers are great, or did the Mets mishandle this in some way? I don't know. I'd seen it out there that he wasn't thrilled that he wasn't contacted when they did sign Devin Williams. He's a free agent, would have been preferable. I guess so. I mean, I don't think that's the normal course of action, but, you know, they needed to do what they could to keep this guy on the team. And this is not an outrageous sum for him, right? I think I picked four for 80, so this is fairly comparable, right? Three for 70 or 69. To me, if he's going to get away, it's going to be someone who's paying 125 million or something. This is a guy they needed to keep. And if Devin Williams is the closer, that's not good. He was not a good closer with the Yankees last year.
Yeah, you lost on the field and off the field. The Mets didn't have a great clubhouse last year. It was never Edwin Diaz's fault, as you know. He is a upbeat, positive guy, and on his worst days, he's a very accountable guy. I don't think that Devin Williams could match him in either forum. And the Mets have gone there. To your point, look, the move went down on what, December 9th. Opening day is March 26th. It's a long way away. To some coincidence, it was a year and a day after the Mets signed Juan Soto away from the Yankees. As we know, the Yankees pivoted strong and put together a very, very good team after losing Juan Soto. So we know it's possible, but the Mets are really starting. It's a point that you've hammered home a lot, John. They have a lot of work to do. The Yankees could, it wouldn't be a great team, but they could open the season tomorrow. They
Yes.
got five starters, they got a bullpen, they got a player at every position. That team would do some winning. The Mets, they need like a whole bullpen still. I guess they could use the starting pitching they have, but they want one more. They're down two outfielders. Alonso's a free agent. Either they have to re-sign him, or in a market where it's impossible to find righty power, they've got to find some righty power. And so letting something out the door that you that was a strength, and you could have done strength on strength. If you are a Devin Williams fan, I'm not sure either of us line up in that big queue. Okay, so you have Diaz and Devin Williams. I wouldn't have even stopped there. Now, by not being proactive, aggressive, or more alluring, you've lost this player. To me, Johnny, it's and you lost it to the Dodgers, who the team ultimately everyone is chasing. And I know this. I mean, I trust the people I spoke to. The Dodgers just thought the Mets were going to beat them at some point. They were
Yeah.
like, they were like, we're going to make an aggressive 3-year offer at a time when the agency was still saying, nah, it's probably going to take 5 to do this. And they said, okay, we'll stick on 3. And then, like, at some point in the 72 hours before the deal, they said, okay, let's talk about that 3-year deal. And they were like, okay, so the Mets probably were told this also. They're just going to beat our 3-year deal, but let's keep doing it.
Yeah.
They tried to acquire Diaz along the way multiple times. They love the player. And the Dodgers, it wasn't me and you, just, I think the Dodgers were a little blown away in the 48 hours leading up to it. Like, do we actually, he's going to leave New York? And so I didn't think it was a fait accompli that he would go coast to coast. The Mets kind of let it happen.
Well, I mean, the Dodgers should understand players want to go there. So good for them. They do an amazing job, and they've got money to spend. Obviously, the Otani's the gift that keeps on giving. You talked about the clubhouse, and I want to get into that because I really don't get what's going on in the clubhouse. They say, they're not worried about the clubhouse publicly, and the moves they're making kind of show that. Talk about an upbeat guy. Now they've lost out of the four most upbeat guys, and we're both in that clubhouse a lot. The four most upbeat guys, the only guy remaining is Lindor, right? I know Marte is a free agent. Nimmo they've traded. Diaz they've lost. Maybe they really aren't worried about the clubhouse. Maybe it is all about metrics. I don't know. I find that bizarre if they really don't think about the clubhouse at all, or maybe they think this is a way to improve the winning of aspect of the clubhouse. I mean, to me. I think it's better if everybody's happier. And, right now you've got some guys who exactly are not bon vivants in that clubhouse. I'm concerned about that as well. But obviously, the big picture is they got a lot of holes, too.
Yeah, John, their actions are not meeting their words either publicly to us, like we want a good clubhouse. But I've also been told by player representatives that they've mentioned that they had a clubhouse dynamic issue last year. And so, again, the trade of Edwin Diaz for Devin Williams, if that's an area, again, on the field, if you told me we have to constantly get 3 outs during the course of the season, I'll take Edwin Diaz. And if you told me we have to make sure the clubhouse is strong, I'll take Edwin Diaz in that matchup. And again, you could have had them both and just said it's going to see to me, John. It's going to be very hard for them if Scooble isn't really getting traded. It's going to be very hard to get an ace, somebody who's so clearly a number one starter in this. To me, Freddie Peralta is like a super number two. Maybe Ranger Suarez is a super number two. That's who those kind of players are. So I would have made sure I have the best bullpen I could possibly have, and money shouldn't ever be the issue for this organization with Steve Cohen owning it. And you have the inside track on keeping Diaz and forming as close to a super bullpen as you could do to protect the rotation. And I just, again, I'm floored that if you talk, John, I think you said this at the beginning, so I hate to be repetitive, but I thought it was maybe the point of all points. If the Mets said, hey, we have a policy on 3 years for a reliever in their 30s or whatever, and they lost to a team that gave them 5 years, I would go, okay, maybe even 4 years. But to lose in the same year bucket by a million-ish a year of deferred money seems impossible to me for a player you need.
Yeah. Yeah, you're having trouble with the negotiation. I'm having trouble with the clubhouse. I'm glad that he's recognizing to in talks to other teams that there is a clubhouse issue, but not only they need to do something in terms of filling that clubhouse with the right personalities. As Mike Puma wrote, their two best players, and they've got 20 years combined remaining with the team, 6 years for Lindor and 14 years for Soto. I mean, these guys, they hardly speak. I'm glad that Mike Puma wrote it. I think everybody in that clubhouse noticed it. I'm glad it's out there, but I mean, they need to do something about that as well. They're not acting, they're acting like they're what they're telling us, which is that they're not concerned about the clubhouse, and I'm not shocked. They are analytics guys. They're metrically oriented. It doesn't shock me, but I think it's interesting what you said that they are telling other teams they are
Telling
concerned.
agents,
Oh, other
agents.
agents. Okay, that they're concerned about the clubhouse. Well, I mean, you know, you can say anything you want to the media, but I maybe I'm wrong, but I think they're probably telling the agents what they're feeling, or I don't know, maybe they're just trying to suck up to those clients. Is that possible? I don't know. We want to have a great clubhouse. Your guy's the guy for us. I don't know. But I am concerned about that. If they're not concerned, I'm concerned about their clubhouse.
Yeah. On the subject of Clubhouse, John, why don't we finish out the segment? There's hardly any better clubhouse guy than Kyle Schwarber. Uh, it was and the Mets had some interest in him as well, which would have that winning that kind of signing would have been an addressing of both an on-field and off-field matter for them. Instead, part of the Mets' bad day is the team that won their division last year just got back their number one target at a time where the Mets did not get back theirs, depending on who you think their number one internal target is, Alonso or Diaz. And of course, Alonso's still out there. Kyle Schwarber, 50 plus
Yeah.
homers, seems to be aging very well, but is obviously going to play at 33 to 37 on this contract. What'd you think at 5 years, 150 for the Phillies?
Well, I mean, that made sense. We felt, I think everybody did, and we wrote that that was the likely outcome, even though the Mets had checked in and several other teams, and certainly the Orioles, as you mentioned, were aggressive at 5 years, 150. I guess that's what pushed it up. And uh, obviously, he gave a chance to the Phillies to match it, and they did that. Not a surprise. John Middleton, Dave Dombrowski, they want to make sure they've got a great team, and they have had a great team for many years. It's a perennial playoff team, so it would have been hard for him to go, even though go to a hometown team, the Reds. Give them credit for sticking in there and also offering the 5 years, but it's difficult to go to a small market team like that. You don't know that they're going to win every single year, as you suspect that the Phillies do. The thing that's amazing to me about, and it does have a great clubhouse reputation, is the trend of his career. At 32 years old, he's twice as valuable as he was at 28 years old. And at 28 years old, he was 10 times more valuable than he was at 25 years old or 26 years old, whenever the Cubs let him go. It's an unusual arc, and give him credit for obviously putting in the work and becoming a better player. 56 home runs last year, just an amazing season. I think the deal was pretty logical. I had 140, 4 for 140 as the prediction, so this is pretty comparable to that. The Phillies do what they need to do. I mean, at this today, it feels like a contrast to the Mets, but we'll see. A lot of time to go. There are, as David Stearns mentioned, there are a lot of great players still on the board. At this point, I don't see an alternative to Alonso. The feeling I get right now is not great around the Mets and Alonso. Not, obviously these situations are fluid. These things can change. You never know. Excuse me. You never know. And yeah, I'm getting not a good feeling. And not saying he's not going to stay with the Mets. But he did come here to this hotel room that we see in the background if you're watching. Visited with Boston, visited with Baltimore, visited with some other teams. I don't know that it's the Mets. Not that they need to visit with him again, but they need to be aggressive and bring him back. I mean, he is actually a better fit than Schwarber. He is a first baseman. He is a right-handed batter. I get that Schwarber had a better year last year. You're not going to beat 56 home runs, but Alonso had a pretty good year as well and hit in the clutch. And if they lose Alonso, I just don't know what the reaction could be with the fans. Nimmo, Diaz, and Alonso gone, and now you've got two great players left who don't talk to each other. That's not good.
Yeah, maybe this is the rip the bandage off season for David Stearns. In other words, it's already hurt so much with Diaz. It's like it would just be on top of that to let Alonso go. John, I think the biggest point there is the specific skill set that he excels at, which is right hand power. is very hard to find in the sport, and therefore puts pressure on the Mets. How do like I always encourage fans, oftentimes when I'm working with Ryan Sampson and doing the Pinstripe Post webcast, because like Ryan's a Yankee fan and he'll say something like, "Oh, they need to get a X." And I will go, where is the X store located? Like, where's the third base store? Where's the left? Like, where's the right-hand power store? Like, I encourage fans, go look at right-hand power in the sport. It is hard to find. Now it's harder to find the available right hand power. Do you obviously it's not at the level of Alonso, but do you try to trade for Ketel Marte to help you in this area? Is like Akamoto, the Japanese free agent, I believe is a right hand hitter. Is he a guy you think projects well to the major leagues? Anyway, it's obviously the Mets have a lot of shopping to do still this offseason. We have to find out that outcome on Pete Alonso. One of the things we did find out the outcome of, John, is Jeff Kent went in on the Special Errors Committee. We both have our Hall of Fame ballots that have to be in by the end of the month. I don't know if you've sent yours yet, but they have to be in by the end of the month. Somebody who was on the Special Errors Committee and somebody who knows Hall of Fame voting and the candidacies better than just about anyone is our friend and colleague, Jayson Stark, and he joins us next on the show. John and I are joined by a friend, a colleague at MLB Network. He works at The Athletic. He does an excellent podcast of his own with Doug Glanville, Starkville. And he's one of the foremost experts on the Hall of Fame. Anybody who cares, certainly between now and Election Day, should go to The Athletic and read his thorough writing on candidates and everything else. Jayson Stark, thank you for joining us on the show.
It's great to be with you guys. Try to go easy on me, okay?
We will
No
like Jayson.
promises.
And let's have transparency here. Jayson mentions to go easy. Jayson was a member of the the Contemporary Eras Baseball Committee. Main contribution 1980s onward. There were 8 players on that ballot. That's the one that Jeff Kent got elected to the Hall of Fame, and only Jeff Kent. It caused a level of controversy. It's why we wanted Jayson on. But the exchange when you're on that committee is there's a certain omerta to it, right? Like the
Good
mafia.
word, Joel.
Like you can't. There's certain things you can't speak about that happen in that room and how you voted. So the way I want to open this up, Jayson, is there is people know our larger committee, right? That all three of us are part of the hundreds. Will vote by the end of this month, and we'll know by the third or so week in January who's elected into the Hall of Fame by the Baseball Writers Association. Tell us about the function, how it works with those 16 people to get to Jeff Kent.
Yeah, I apologize that I can't tell you specifically about what happened in the room and how we voted. I honestly don't even know how anybody else in the room voted. But I can tell you that I've done this a couple times now. I consider it to be an incredible honor. As both you know, I love the Hall of Fame. I care about the Hall of Fame. I understand the impact on lives and on baseball fans of voting for the Hall of Fame. And so I take that role going into that room as a member of that committee extremely seriously and prepare as thoroughly as you can imagine. And so the makeup of the committee, at least this year, was nearly half was players. There were 7 Hall of Fame players in the room. Then we had 6 longtime Major League executives in the room, plus myself, my friend and coworker at The Athletic, Tyler Kepner, and Steve Hurt, who is currently with Stats, and formerly with the Elias Sports Bureau, one of the foremost baseball historians on earth. He's now done this 14 times. And so let me try to tell you how I consider my role in that group. I look at things obviously different than not just other Hall of Fame voters, but obviously how different than how players and executives look at the Hall of Fame. And so I consider my job to frame the case for each player. We consider the eight players in the ballot alphabetically. A name gets thrown out there, and basically people look at us, me and Steven Tyler. And so we start talking and try to frame the case, the historic impact of that player. And then my favorite part of being on those committees is to then look at those Hall of Fame players and say, this is why I think we as writers never elected this player. What did you guys see? And I mean, some of the perspective that you get back is incredible, Joel. I love that part of it. We have executives in the room. You can say to those executives, when you were a GM and this guy was playing, how did you look at him? We could say, who would you have rather had in your team, this candidate or that candidate? And that's really how we get there. And it honestly is a fantastic experience in terms of all of that.
I berated you in the hallway. I apologize for that because I was dissatisfied with the result. Although I
I,
did vote for Jeff Kent ultimately in the last several years, so I get it. I understand that. But certainly in New York, we were very disappointed that Don Mattingly didn't make it. A guy I voted for every single time. Same with I voted for Murphy every single time that he was on the ballot as well. So how do you feel when because we heard when it was announced on MLB Network, you could even hear groans in. And I felt bad for Jeff Kent for the first time in my life. But in the lobby, even the lobby, they're not all New Yorkers. I know we're in Florida, so many New Yorkers probably. But how did you feel about the final result? Were you dissatisfied too? Because I know you voted for several of those players.
yeah, I can't really comment too specifically about Jeff Kent and whether even I voted for him in the room,
But I mean,
but
the fact there was only
I can,
one. Also, the
yeah,
fact there was only one too.
right.
Yeah.
So let me try to do this way. First off, I voted for Jeff Kent for 10 years too. I look at him as a historically significant player at his position. You know, the he was the guy who hit more home runs than any second baseman who ever played baseball. Drove in more runs than any second baseman who ever played baseball, or at least since RBIs became an official stat. He has the highest slugging percentage of any second baseman in the last 100 years. I've written all of this a million times, and was a big part of winning. And him and Barry Bonds on those teams in San Francisco. So Jeff Kent had enough historical impact as a player that I, I don't. I know there's a lot of furor. I don't think the furor should be that we elected Jeff Kent. As I interpret it, it's much the way you just described it, John. The frustration out there is why only Jeff Kent? Why Jeff Kent, not Barry Bonds, for that matter? Why Jeff Kent and not the feel-good Hall of Fame stories we could have written with Murphy and Mattingly? I completely understand the frustration, and um, I wish I could tell you more about what happened in the room and why Jeff Kent got elected and other guys didn't. What I would suggest is what I've told everybody. Look at the way we voted and try to think it through and think about how the people in that room processed that ballot. An incredibly loaded ballot where you could easily make a case for all eight players on it. And we only had three spots. Hall of Fame voting is difficult when we do it in the writers' election. It might even be more difficult when you're looking at a ballot with only three spots and that many great players.
Jason, as much as the Jeff Kent one, and I think to John's point, was a furor because it was a solo. I think if you announce Jeff Kent, Don Mattingly, and Dale Murphy, like whatever, I
Yeah.
think people just gloss over Jeff Kent and go, "Wow, it's a feel good whatever," and it's that. I was even more surprised by the Carlos Delgado number. You were able to make an historic case for Jeff Kent doing something like more voluminous than anyone else in the history at his position, second base, not a traditional offensive position. And I always have to be careful. nobody gets on the ballot writ large, and certainly the ballot you just dealt with, if they are not in the top 2 or 3% of players in the history of the game. So if I'm about to say, like, hey, Carlos Delgado surprised me, the backing he got, understand, I think he's a great player. But like when you start to think about the history of the game, fame, the Hall of Fame, uh, it feels like Carlos Delgado's the kind of guy you go, well, there's this 30 homer seasons and this many 100 RBI seasons and this, but it's like, yeah, we all covered the game. Did I miss the, hey, I can't wait to see Carlos Delgado play the way you would say Dale Murphy, Don Mattingly, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens. What am I missing that he got such support in that room?
I don't know if I can even answer this. You know, there,
I like that
there
question.
you like the question better than the answer. I'm sure of that. Like there are always surprises when these committees meet. And I mean, one thing that people should know is there's not like backroom deal making. I know people think this happens, that there's a lot of guys going off into a corner and whispering to each other, and I'll vote for your guy if you vote for my guy. And I've never seen any of that. The vote
Well,
comes
just so you know,
from,
Jason, I didn't think that about Delgado. I know who was on the committee. I wouldn't imagine who would have been the champion of Carlos Delgado in that room. That's
yeah,
why, again, I'm offering some level of surprise that on that loaded ballot, that's the guy who finished a strong second.
yeah. I honestly can't answer this, Joel. But what I can say is what I told you earlier is I consider it to be my job to frame what I think the case is for this player, and then ask people around the room what they thought, what they saw. Tyler, much the same. Steve Hurt, much the same. Um, and there are reasons that players like Carlos Delgado get a lot of votes. And you'll have to think about those reasons because I can't tell you how it went. There was one thing that I wanted to say in answer to the last question, though, and that is that one reason that you only get one um, is the mathematics of how the vote works now. You know, I'm not a mathematician. I've played one on TV a couple of times, but people tell me that if you look at the mathematical odds of election. I mean, you can understand how you could elect one, but there's only 48 total ballot spots in the room among 16 of us. And so it becomes really hard to elect more than one and becomes virtually impossible mathematically to elect more than two. And so, you know, if you went in thinking, not to say I did this, I need to vote for Don Mattingly and Dale Murphy, then all of a sudden there are other players, great players on the ballot, and mathematically you only have one more spot. You can't vote for them all. That's true no matter what you think going in. The mathematics make it incredibly hard. 75%. I always thought that would be the separator. It's so hard to get 75% in any election, Hall of Fame, dog catcher, whatever it is. But now that you're down to three possible spots, we used to have four last time I did it. Three is really hard, and it creates a lot of, I think, unusual vote totals across the room.
Yeah, within the criteria, and it's not a long, it's not a page long thing. It's a paragraph or two are the words sportsmanship and integrity. Uh, it feels to me, and again, I'm not asking you what you heard in the room, but it feels to me just based on the votes or the lack of votes, is that is just taken to me now. Did you do steroids or not? But nothing positive. You know, sportsmanship and integrity can be a positive as well. It doesn't have to be, we're just going to eliminate the steroid guys. It could be this guy was a fantastic leader. He helped guide the team or something like that. Do you get the impression generally, not only just with this vote, that that's what this has been taken to mean, that sportsmanship integrity means we're going to not vote for the steroid guys, which I get, and I generally did not vote for them. And nothing positive can be taken out of someone's career.
Well, are you saying that somebody like Mattingly or Murphy doesn't get positive character and integrity
Yeah, I'm
votes.
wondering if
Well,
if that
I,
weighs in any, if it didn't feel from this vote and from other votes that it weigh. I mean, we all voted for Mattingly. I don't know, or didn't vote for him. He was on the ballot for, at least 10 years. I can't remember if it was 10 or 15 in his case. I think it was 15.
15 for Don Mattingly,
Okay,
right?
so
And
he
Murphy
didn't get
too.
a tremendous number of votes, and neither did Murphy. I mean, when I look at all the votes that they didn't get and I gave them, I'm thinking I count sportsmanship integrity as something that can be a positive too. It's not all just did you take steroids or not? Because this was written before there were any steroids. Do you have the feeling that, maybe I'm in the vast minority here that counts sportsmanship and integrity as it could be a positive thing? And
It,
it's not all about did
yeah,
you take steroids?
hey, John, I've written about this many times. I think we should be looking at that term just the way you just described. I think we should be awarding points for people who had impeccable character and integrity. And there's another part of that too, which talks about contributions to the game. And I don't know, I think that means we're not just talking about a guy's playing career, but what he did for the sport. And so you have some players who weren't just great players, but went on to manage, broadcast, elevate people's love of the game. Joe Torre comes to mind. I think Joe Torre had a case as a player, but when you consider the entire baseball life, I think that's why he got elected. And so, like the people in the room are just like us. We all have our own interpretation of what this stuff means. And just like in any election, that when people step into the voters booth to vote for dog catcher, they all have these ideas in their head. That's what happens when we vote, and it's what happens in this room. And um, there was a great discussion about Don Mattingly, about Dale Murphy, honestly, about everyone on that ballot. And you can surmise that all these things came up. I can't tell you how or why anyone else in the room voted. I know how I voted and why I voted that way. And it's always fascinating. And just before it's announced on TV, they gather us around and they tell us who got elected and what the vote was. And I'm always surprised.
It's interesting. What's interesting to me, are they still voting for dog catcher in your town? You brought it up a couple of times.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've been sitting that one out, so I'll have to get back to you on that.
Jayson, before we let you go, and it's something obviously we're all going to be talking and writing about a lot over the next month plus, is the ballot that actually was sent out in November and is due by the end of this month, by the end of December. Uh, Tell us one player on it, one issue, whatever stood out as you begin your process with the ballot, the larger ballot.
Yeah. Joe, this is something that you've talked about all the time. What an honor it is just to be on the ballot. But that said, this is probably the thinnest crop of first year players on any ballot that I can remember. It's really hard to look at any first year player and think that's a Hall of Famer. I wonder if anybody's going to get 5%. I mean, the two best first timers, I think you'd probably agree with this, right? Are Cole Hamels and Ryan Braun. They had the best careers. They're the only two guys in the ballot who had more than 36 career wins above replacement. Hamels was just about at 60, and Ryan Braun got close to 50 wins above replacement, but he's obviously got some stuff hanging over him. And like, I wonder, after years and years and years of 12 years of electing 18 first ballot Hall of Famers, does anybody get 5%? How many voters are going to use all 10 spots? It's pretty hard to imagine you're going to do that unless you've had somebody that you haven't voted for in the past and now you want to circle back around. That guy might be Felix Hernandez for me. I think one of the things that we started to talk about a lot is like the big old magic counting numbers are starting to disappear. We're never going to see a 300 game winner again. We're getting close to the point we might never see a 200 game winner again. And so, what's a Hall of Fame starting pitcher look like? maybe it looks something like Felix Hernandez, who had a 6-year run where he finished first or second in the Cy Young voting 3 times. And, his record is that much above 500. And he got 20% last time, but now there are a lot of votes that have been used up by the 3 guys who got elected and the one who fell off the ballot. So are we going to start looking more closely about those players who had big peaks and were great in their time? I keep thinking about Buster Posey coming on the ballot next year with 1,500 career hits. And he feels like a Hall of Famer to me. If Buster Posey gets elected, he changes everything for a whole group of players that I've been voting for to try to keep on the ballot. Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, David Wright is one. Dustin Pedroia I voted for last year because I think all those guys were famous. They were great for a period of time. And if Buster Posey gets in with 1,500 hits, it changes everything about how we look at the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I value Peak tremendously. I'm with you on Felix Hernandez. Maybe I'm getting soft in my old age. I actually found 9 people to vote for on this
John,
year's
don't let
ballot.
that get out.
It's terrible. I feel I'm embarrassed. I'm almost ashamed. It's really sad. I found 9 to vote for. Many of those, all the guys that you mentioned, I think I voted for. I saw Johan Santana not on the ballot in the hallway here and I'm like, well, you know what? I'm
Wow.
voting for Felix Hernandez now. Johan Santana is kind of in that ballpark too. I'm kind of a Pete guy. Some of my questions were a little bit toward the negative side about the contemporary era, the Veterans Committee, I guess in an umbrella, we call it Veterans Committee.
Yeah.
But, I appreciate it because you know what? There were guys in there that I voted for every year, like Fred McGriff, who eventually he didn't get much support from the writers, but he got in. Dave Parker, every year, didn't get
Yeah.
much support. I voted for him and got in. Is there somebody on either on this ballot or someone who's been passed over or 1 or 2 guys that you trumpet, that you feel very strongly about that we've kind of missed on? And I'm glad, like I said, I'm very glad that you guys have corrected the Park, at least in my mind, it's the correction, Parker and McGriff. So I like the committee, and I did vote for Kent, and I don't want to be too negative about it, but I'm still a little hurt about Mattingly, so that's why.
John, I'm going to think of you as a softie now for the
I
rest of
am.
my life.
It's sad.
Right. But I'm glad you make this point because I feel the way you do. I do think that as much as this committee takes a lot of shots, it performs a very valuable function in the Hall of Fame process. Because, I mean, I know how much the 3 of us care about our ballot, and we put so much time and thought into it. And writers think differently than baseball people. And we haven't cornered the market on all wisdom, much as we'd like to. And I'm always interested in who do Hall of Fame players think was a Hall of Fame player. There's nothing wrong with giving them the chance to have that say. And so I could start going through our horrible one and dones with you. And Johan is certainly one of them. David Cohn. David Cohn deserves another look. I hope he gets one. Bernie Williams was not one and done, but it's a rough oversight by us. Jim Edmonds, Kenny Lofton, Lance Berkman. I would love it if these committees would give those players another look. And I don't know what would happen. I don't know where it's leading, but I would love for them to get another chance. They appeared on our ballot at a time when it was just overstuffed. If you look at how many Hall of Famers were on the ballot, the year Carlos Delgado was one and done. Look at how many Hall of Famers were on the ballot Jeff Kent's first year. Look at how many were on the ballot when Andrew Jones came on our ballot and got 7% the first year and almost didn't get enough to get a year 2. It's a really interesting part of the process is when you arrive on the ballot and who else is there and how it makes you look in that moment, but sometimes in a different moment, everything can change.
Yeah, you're all soft. It's just,
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
right.
it's the Hall of Fame, and I think you know this, Jason. We spend a lot of time together, especially in Cooperstown every year. Besides talking, Jason, if for transparency, Jason is a phone call I make every year before I finally send in my ballot to make sure the ones that I think about, because I actually, honestly, not just that how I feel, not just because you're a guest on the show. No, I don't think anybody churns this quite the way you do and thinks
Thank
about
you.
it in three dimensions quite the way you do. But as just a way to close, I'll do it. Have we gotten too soft? Um, it's the Hall of Fame. And again, nobody's making the ballot who isn't special. And do we have to decide what the 1 yard line is? I think social media has changed everything. I think people get soft because they don't want to get criticized.
Yeah.
You guys know me. I don't look at it. But I find out well enough from people, oh, you only put two on or three on or four on. Well, there is no rule. Like everyone wants to put people in the Hall of Fame. We're not voting for dog freaking catcher here. We're actually voting for the Baseball Hall of Fame. Like, what have we lowered the standard? If you're voting for nine on this ballot, John, come on, nine on this ballot. Like,
They got peak. They were. I mean, wasn't Pedroia a pretty special a player in a short amount of time? Wasn't David Wright without the injury pretty special? Felix Hernandez.
yes, the
We didn't
Hall of
vote.
Fame should be defined by who we leave out because it's so hard to get in. That somebody's got to be left on the other side of the goal line.
Yeah, the goal line moves, and it's John's fault because he's so soft. But
Yes,
that,
soft on crime.
but
He can't be elected dog catcher. He's too soft on crime.
I
no
He's
doubt,
soft on
the
dog.
the dogs are running amok in John's neighborhood. We
We'll
know
let the
this.
dogs out. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, drawing that line is the hard part, and the reason I enjoy our conversations about this so much, Joel, is you are a small, hallish kind of guy, and you think differently than me, and so I enjoy thinking about where we should be drawing the line. And like we both spend too much time around our friend Ryan Kenny, John, you too, and I think he's been beating this drum that we need to think about these players who felt like Hall of Famers in their peak, even though their peak might not have been as long as back in the day, players when guys were playing 25 years, and players who contributed to winning. Like that stuff matters. Um, I know that you vote for Jimmy Rollins, for example. Shocks me that more people don't vote for Jimmy Rollins. Chase Utley, I think he's going to get elected here at some point. I think Jeff Kent's election helps a guy like that. Does he have the fame component? Joel, he does. Does he have the winner component? He does. Does he have the big peak? He does. And Jimmy Rollins and Chase Utley played together on teams that finished first 5 years in a row, won a World Series, lost another one. And winning, like the winning part matters. So,
It
like
certainly
this
matters
is,
to me.
yeah,
Uh,
this is a big part. This is a big element in how we're evolving as voters. And I like being along for that ride.
yeah, because to me, it's not close. If you told me only Chase Utley or Jeff Kent could be a Hall of Famer, I would go with Chase Utley 7 days a week and twice on Sunday.
I'm with
Chase
you
Utley.
guys too. I'm with you on the
Yeah.
Utley and on Rollins.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joel is such a small hole guy. He could put it in he could put it inside a Wawa. I'll do a Philly. I
That's
mean, he
good
could
work,
cut. You
John.
could knock down half of the Hall of Fame if Joel was in charge of it.
John, it's tough to have standards and try to keep
I have standards. I have standards.
them.
Apparently I'm not
You're
going to
soft.
stop here. I'm a nicer
Yeah.
guy. Apparently, I am
All
just
the dogs
finding
are
it.
roaming around, John. You're too
I'm finding this out.
If only we were in
Jason, this
charge.
yes, of the zoo, literally.
That's right.
Jason, I'm glad that the people who listen to our podcast, we always thank them for doing that, got to hear the conversation. It's a conversation we have with you quite a lot, and because we enjoy it, we gain knowledge from it, and I'm sure everybody who's listening did the same here. So, Jason, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you guys for having me. Your show's great. I love listening to it, and really happy to be a part of it every once in a while this time of year.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Jason.
John and I, of course, thank our friend Jayson Stark for joining us on the show. John, hit or error?
Well, we gave a big error to the Mets. I might as well give a hit to the Los Angeles Dodgers, who seem to do everything right. Everything's going their way. Two-time defending World Series champion. To pull in Diaz here when they weren't expecting it. I mean, they had, I don't say they have weaknesses, but they don't have some. They have some areas that aren't the greatest strengths, and obviously the bullpen was an issue this year. And now they've added the best closer in my mind in baseball. So hats off to the Dodgers. Amazing job.
I'm going to give two hits, John. One is to you. Thank you so much. I took a couple of weeks off for keeping the show going every week. You brought
Thank
in a couple of guest hosts and kept our show going strong. I appreciate you doing that. And as always, everyone should know how hard John works, and it included doing the show while I was off for a few weeks. So thanks. But while I was off, the Nimmo Semien trade went down, and I want to give a hit to Brandon Nimmo on the way out of the room. The Mets, in general, especially in comparison to the Yankees, are a much better clubhouse to work. One of the reasons that's been true over the years is Brandon Nimmo. Good times, bad times, pregame, postgame, good about him, bad about him. He was an available, effusive, insightful person in their clubhouse. I wish him luck in Texas, and I thank him for being such a pro in his time with the Mets.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about their clubhouse, but they are much more available, accessible than the Yankees clubhouse. We've had on Nimmo multiple times, Lindor multiple times, Alonso came on. Basically everybody. We haven't asked
Ron
Soto yet.
Manaya,
You know,
right, came with on with us.
Mania, Severino. We've had on Holmes. Basically anybody in that clubhouse is agreed to come on. Plus, the owner comes on multiple times. Yankee owner, he came on once, I think, with us, but I haven't seen him in a while. But the Yankees are not the same there. But I'm with you on Brandon Nimmo, fantastic guy. And the fantastic guys just keep leaving the Mets clubhouse. I'm very
Yeah.
sad about this. The fans should be too.
Another fantastic guy and another guy who kept the show going while I took a couple of weeks off, lazy dogs me, is Tommy Hogan, our terrific producer. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, please subscribe, rate, review. It does help the show. The New York Post Sports YouTube page, give us a view, follow us there as well. And we're going to wrap up here from the winter meetings, but we have a lot of hot stove to go, and we hope you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.